Hello, 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 hello. It's good to see you. Say hello.
Welcome to the Huskies Hockey Podcast. Weldie and Andrew sitting here after another 2-point weekend for your St. Cloud State Huskies men team as they win in overtime on Friday before losing in CC, breaking a drought that spanned, a little over a decade of CC not being able to beat the Huskies in Colorado Springs. And women were able to take a point on the first game. It was a Saturday-Sunday series, so I'm going to get that confused. Don't go by CHN. Always take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, first game, getting a point, forcing overtime before the healthy Harvey gets the overtime goal. And then Wisconsin was able to pull away in the second game for the victory there. So let's talk about the CC series again. Another 2-point weekend, our fourth in a row. We're starting to get quite accustomed to that. And I think I've come to the realization of something that I've kind of been dealing with about this team, and I think I'm going to hold that on a little bit later. So I think I'm going to just have that as a little bit of a tease. But just kind of overall, I'm disappointed. I'm sure the team is disappointed. Where are you on the disappointed to angry scale, or like just how this 2024 has gone absolutely pear-shaped? Even though we're still getting points. You know, we finally dropped to 15 in the pairwise, being able to hang on for 13 for an absurdly long time. So what are your thoughts here, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm not sure if anger is the right emotion. I was much angrier at the during the Omaha series. That's probably where my anger stage, because it's what did not anger, or is it anger, denial, bargaining, something else, and acceptance?
I can't believe this, but yes, that's actually my realization. And I was going to put this at the end, but I might as well get to it right now. No, I've gone through the whole stages, and I've realized that I've gone
stage that I'm missing.
5 stages. So it starts out with denial, right?
Denial's for yep.
And
it's anger.
So then let's go back. Let's go back to what my thoughts were and what my process is. My denial.
Denver and North Dakota. You're like, I'm not worried.
I'm not worried. We're outplaying them. We've outplayed Denver for most of the periods. We really handled North Dakota, with exception of
you're like North Dakota ain't any good. They're no great.
They're not any good. Yep, exactly. Total denial. I skipped over anger.
Well, I feel that emotion for the Omaha game, especially series, especially the Friday game against them, yelling at the TV during that one.
Yep. So next one, B, bargaining. And my bargaining was always just a couple of little correction. All we need to make, if we
this
just
road trip, it'll be great. You still got time. You can make it up. You take a majority of the points in CC, and then you'll be fine.
Yep, exactly. I was like, it was just a little bit of miscues on defense. Maybe if we just, a couple of mishandles with the puck, we clear up these things that are all fixable. I remember I really hung on that word. These are all fixable mistakes that we didn't make early in the season. If we just fix these little mistakes, we're going to be fine. I did not hit depression.
Depression, yes. Okay.
So I didn't hit depression. However, after the fourth goal on Saturday, when we again gave up a power play goal or a goal on the power play, we gave that up to a team, again, 10% on the power play, equivalent of Stonehill here that we're giving up power play goals to, on credit to them, I guess. It was a really good passing play, and they had about 4 grade A chances. They finally scored on the 4th one in that power play. They really worked it all over the Huskies defense. I hit acceptance at that part. And I said to my wife, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to enjoy the rest of the season. I am, and call me a pessimist. I'm throwing in the towel, whatever you want to do. But this team and how they have been playing, how they've been losing, and the fixable mistakes, the mistakes that I've said that are fixable, we keep making them, which makes me think that they're not going to be fixed at this point. It's like there's only so many times you can shoot yourself in the foot before you'll reload the cartridge and then keep doing it.
I think
and
it's
it's
like
just
an exact quote I had last week.
Yeah. And I thought it'd be fixed by now. And, we got bad turnovers. We've got defensemen literally laying down on the play, letting the CC players skate around us. Horrible breakouts, where like stretch passes that are nowhere near connecting. And it's just, and the biggest thing that I'm trying to struggle with, and I promise I'm going to let you talk, which is why I wanted to put this.
That's
right
what we're here for.
end.
I'm here to listen.
This is my therapy. Right. You are cheaper than my therapist. I will say that. So I do appreciate that. But it's, you just get to the point where I don't know. It's just everything just ends up. We keep making these same mistakes, and the biggest thing that I'm hung up on is that we looked slow. I've been saying that aggressive teams are a thorn in the Huskies side, and I think that CC is a decent team. I don't think they're incredibly good because they don't have a lot of, offensive firepower. But they're tenacious, they're aggressive, and I think they're really quick. And that really frustrates the Huskies. And it really, I don't remember a time where a St. Cloud team was so outpaced as much as they were this series.
It's a lot. It's a lot to digest.
So I'm at acceptance. I'm just going to ride out this season. I'm going to enjoy the season. I'm still going to cheer for them. I'm still going to hope they make the NCAA tournament. But at this point, I'm not seeing that.
Acceptance
they're
to me kind of implies that you're accepting that this isn't a tournament team. Would I be
correct
in that assessment?
You are correct. Nothing in the last 4 series has made me think otherwise.
And that's kind of what I said last week. Like I said, if we had to pick the field episode last week, I probably wouldn't have picked the Huskies. I wouldn't, for sure, I wouldn't pick them this week if we did such a bit. It's weird because I had already come to this stage after the Alaska series in October. I'm like, this looks to be a rebuilding year. It's young. They're young, and okay, we were just way off on our expectations, but I could still enjoy the season. And then November and December happened, and then that kind of recharged our preseason expectations for the team. And then the calendar flipped, and now I'm back to where I was right around Halloween. And so I guess, I was getting the emotion scale. Depression probably was where I was at this weekend, because I wasn't necessarily angry. It was more kind of depressed and a little bit shocked, because the other fig leaf that we could attach ourselves, the hope to the last 3 weekends prior to this one, was, there were some exceptions, like the second period in the first Denver game, but for the most part, like we went through it last weekend or last show about how many dominant periods St. Cloud had been having over the last 3 weekends. Mm-hmm. 18 to 4 shot advantages and dictating play, 30 to 35 shots per game. Really, those last 5 games, not counting the first, the clunker in Denver. And so I was hanging my hat on the fact that that's generally a sign of sustainable good play You keep that up, the bounces will go your way. You can, as you said, iron out some of those defensive miscues, and the offense should be able to carry you. Well, that was the thing this weekend that was missing. We still had the defensive breakdowns, the turnovers, sloppy play, but we didn't have the offensive push that we had the last 3 weeks prior to this. And against the CC team, that really surprised me. I mean, I don't know if I'd even necessarily agree that they were so fast. I was surprised at how physical they were. I mean, this was a very rough and tumble series. We'll get into the physicality of it because I'm sure that's top of mind when summarizing the series. But it wasn't as much I thought that the Huskies were just getting skated circles around by a quicker team. It's just that they weren't able to ever kick it into high gear. There was one stretch because the first 8 minutes or so, CC dominated that play, the Friday game. It just so happened that the first shot for the Huskies went in, Cooper goal.
Yeah.
But that might have been the only shot they had for that first 8 minutes or so. But then I thought after maybe the second half of the first period and about the first 8 to 10 minutes of the second period, I thought the Huskies seemed to get their legs and they seemed to be at that point dictating play. But, since like the second half of the second period on Friday throughout the rest of the weekend, the Huskies were skating uphill and they could not match CC for whatever reason. That third period on Friday was one of those periods that we had talked about for the Huskies the last few weekends, 20-5 or something shot advantage. And I think the saving grace, getting 2 points out of this weekend, you mentioned you don't think CC's all that great. I would agree with you because if they were even, I think, a notch better, they would have swept both of these games. And the Friday game probably wouldn't have been very close, maybe 4-1 win or something like that. They were helping them out with missing the net on golden opportunities and able to generate a lot of chances, but weren't able to finish. And credit for Bassey, I think a comeback weekend for him. He definitely looked better than he did. I'll say the first 5 periods of the weekend, the Friday or the third period on Saturday, we saw a little bit of the Bassey we've seen of late, but for the whole, I thought he was much better than he has been recently. And he is to credit for keeping the Huskies in the game and getting that game to overtime, weathering a bunch of 5-on-3 in overtime there, basically for the first minute and a half or so. And so nice to see him, rebound. But it was the offensive pressure or lack thereof that's really troubling. I'm not going to label this rock. I would hope that this is rock bottom. But we got Miami coming up this weekend. And
we have a chance to hit rock bottom.
Very close to when after that Alaska series, they were playing Miami the following series. They got a bye week in between that time, that portion of the schedule. Don't have the benefit of getting off weekend before you hit them this weekend. But after that, looking forward to that first Miami series, I was like, I can't expect more than a split. And I feel the same this time around. And if you get less than that, I think that's rock bottom. And I would at that point probably be surprised that St. Cloud would make the tournament. There's still certainly a chance. You've got 8 games left in the conference schedule, and there is time to right the ship. So I'm not putting my eggs in the basket that this is necessarily I'm not writing it off, but I'm not also confident that they will make the tournament this year. I'm the same with you. I've accepted just to enjoy the games, and I'm looking forward to going and seeing them in person this weekend. We'll talk about that. But because I can't fly halfway across the country, bring my sandals and my suntan lotion and then be miserable on the beach in between kind of disappointing wins on the weekend. I have to go there with the mindset that I'm there to have fun and enjoy my vacation, my spring break, so to speak. A little early, but still, sandy beaches in February, it's good enough for me. So I don't know. We're going to dissect a lot of what went wrong this weekend because it was different from what was going wrong. I mean, some of it was the same, namely some defensive miscues. But as a whole, it kind of was a little different because he had better goaltending this weekend and he just didn't have offense show up.
Yeah.
And so that was a little bit of a departure from what's been going on the last few weeks. But, again, now it's 8 games in a row that you haven't won a regulation game. I mean, the overtime win is a plus. It goes into part of pairwise as a full win, like in your comparison in CC. So I hope that they're not taking that much of a reward out of that, but at least it is a step in the right direction. But you seem like the one step in the right direction, you took 2 steps back on Saturday, unable to get the job done there. And
There's
so,
just no response. I mean, they're just a lack of counterpunch.
Yeah, and that's the depressing part of the weekend is that again, if this was another one of these games where you're out shooting the opponent and you got 30 plus shots and you just ran into Umberco, who did play well, but you didn't test him nearly enough that I thought that you would, it'd be a different story. Maybe I'd still cling to some of that, dumb hope, but I don't know. I'm not writing the season off, but it lowers the expectations. And this team, more so than the other teams that we've covered on this show, whether or not the last 2 years or the first iteration of the show, this team seems to be much more of a roller coaster. I'm always modifying my expectations because they do seem to be kind of a Jekyll and Hyde team where I'm not sure what the make of the team and how they play. I don't know how to expect that from one weekend to the next, and that's a little weird. But obviously not a weekend that's a memorable one. And but like I said, it's not rock bottom yet, or that could be rock bottom. This is a kind of another turning point in the year. And so we'll see how they respond here against Miami this weekend. But sort of on your boat, I'm not obviously thrilled with how the weekend went.
Yeah, looking at here, we're still sitting in second place in the conference.
That's right.
North Dakota has a 7-point lead, so they got a pretty handy lead here, but at the same time, it's not like sound the alarm bells, everything's going. I just, like you said, how modifying expectations, I think you hit it kind of right on the head there for me too. It's just like my expectations now have changed to where it's like, I just don't think this team has it. And to when you said about, how I thought the Huskies looked slow, and, you said it's not that they were fast and they're physical. It's like, you got a point there. And I think that's maybe it is like, we look slow because we could, like, they were just always in our face. And by the end of the by the end of the Saturday game, that frustration really came to a boil when there was a lot of chippiness and a lot of scrums after the whistle and some extracurriculars that ended up taking place between both teams. A lot of chirping between them, and that might be something where if they do play sometime towards the end of the season, it's going to be kind of a game that's going to be kind of interesting to how the turn of events are going to kind of unfold there. So let's talk about the games themselves. Friday's game, 2-1 overtime win. Kupka, like you said, 1 shot, 1 goal. And I feel like it's another game, and I didn't fact check this because why would I fact check on this podcast? But it feels like we've had a couple of games here where we do get that early goal, and nothing really comes of it. I felt like we had the early goal
early one against
Omaha, right?
Saturday
so
game.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just nothing really comes from that after that. And it, really from that moment on, it was just kind of Colorado College dictating play. CC, what they feel like they get a goal, ends up getting waved off and challenged. for goaltender interference, which I thought was a risky challenge. I actually didn't agree with the challenge in the first spot because
just had burned the timeout. So
yeah,
you were
you
risking
just
a
had
minor
burned the
penalty
timeout.
there for delay a game if you lost the challenge.
Yeah. So, losing a goal and then a penalty as well on top of it to essentially an NCHC review, which is a coin flip. And then ended up working out for them. So,
which I thought was a break. I mean, I thought there was some interference there, but as you said, whenever you put it in the hands of NCHC refs, there was no such thing as an open and shut case.
And a quick review too, which also I was like, wow, all right, they came to that conclusion.
And that is a judgment call, which again, you can say that that's clear interference. I still think it's a gray area call. It's not like they're reviewing it whether or not the puck crossed the line or something like that. So I was a little pleasantly surprised that goal was overturned. And at that time, kind of feeling good about the weekend at that point. Maybe you got the good fortune for the series started on the right foot, but alas, that did not stick around. And you're saying too about like scoring first, which they've done a good amount. Throughout this entire streak, he scored first in the clunker in Denver. He scored first in that game. The second North Dakota game, he scored first there. Scored first in both Omaha games. And then on Friday in CC, he scored first. Another one too. This was for Friday's game. That was the third out of 4 games at that point that the Huskies had taken a lead into the third period. And no regulation wins in any of those games.
Yeah.
And this one was an overtime win. The other two ties / tie against North Dakota and then overtime loss against Omaha. So, it's the other thing too, having late leads and coughing those up, never a good sign either. And yeah, so it takes them into the third period with that 1-0 lead. But as you mentioned, that not so hot CC power play came back to burn you, and that produced the game tying goal. First goal that CC had scored on old friend Dominic Bassi. 2 shutouts prior to this and 2 periods of shutout hockey prior to the game tying goal in the third on Friday. But got the monkey off their back, and the rest of that period after the game tying goal was, remember when I mentioned like this team kind of tends to go on tilt? This was a tilty period.
That was a very tilty
especially
period.
Towards the end when Lukey takes 3 penalties, 2 of them on successive shifts late in the game, and then Wiley joins him to set up that 5-on-3 and straddling the last few seconds of regulation and then a good chunk of overtime to start it. We're not thinking, especially with the history of CC this year at overtime, you're just like, where is the Laba winner? Just waiting for that patiently. But never came. They were able to weather that storm and somehow able to win that game with a Verder goal late in the overtime session. And it just, after he scores that goal and, CC does a little desperation challenge. Why not, I suppose. Sweat that out.
I didn't think you could review puck out of play.
I didn't think so either. It's kind of like Larson, like whether or not he was considering challenging for the non-icing call last weekend against Omaha. It's like desperation's a sneaky cologne at some points. But after that was made official, then you're kind of just thinking, okay, highway robbery. This one was a stolen 2 points. And at that point, I'll take it because there ain't too much to be happy about.
We had 2 points stolen from us earlier.
That's
so,
right. But 2 points and feeling as, the least amount of confidence that you can take out of an overtime win in that situation. Pretty ugly.
Yeah, 2 points. And as we're sitting on the bubble, too, like you said, a pairwise complete head-to-head victory which definitely helps in those comparisons. And I expected a little bit of a response, maybe a wake up call for the Saturday game. That didn't happen. VT has a stomach bug, not able to go in that game, and
which is
yeah.
a bummer. I mean,
yeah, that's a huge. I mean, that's our leading goal scorer.
right. Thankful, I suppose, that nobody else had the stomach bug, or at least maybe some people did. They just didn't. They played through it. That would make sense based on what we saw on Saturday.
Yeah.
Some of those guys weren't 100% health.
So it's, I mean, more of the same story. Aggressive CAC was able to cause the Huskies fits. Takes the 2-0 lead. Shortly after, though, Mason Salquist gets the goal on the power play, which, of course he does, because I always question why he's on the power play. So it's, I guess, obviously I'm happy about it, but 2-1. And I'm like, okay, this is, we're going to get back into it. So I like our, I'm still optimistic. I'm still hopeful.
Great pass, by the way, by Okabe on that power play goal from Salquist. Kind of like between the legs, kind of no look dish. It's nice.
Yeah. It's had a couple of those over the past stretch. He had that no look pass against North Dakota, I think it was.
I think in Omaha too, he had some nice plays.
Or was it Omaha? Oh, so, he's seen the ice well. Mason Salquist, by the way, that was his 4th goal of the season. If you remember, his over/under was at 4.5.
Oh, really?
So one more, he hits the over on the prop bet, which I do have an update later in the show as well for a prop bet that did hit. So
keep us posted.
Stay tuned for that.
I'm guessing I took the under on Salquist.
Yes, you did.
Not surprising.
But I did too. So I guess that's makes sense. So, but then a third period comes, and this is kind of the play that really irked me is Huskies, kind of digging around the puck. And if you watch the replay in the upper left-hand corner, you see Salquist gets hit from behind. And it's not the behind hit that concerns me, because it wasn't like a dangerous hit or anything like that, but it was still, he was hit without the puck deliberately. So that should be a penalty. And especially because I thought there was a big difference between how the two games were called. I felt that there was a lot more called during the Saturday game than the Friday game. So I thought that precedent was already set, that they didn't want to let this one get out of hand, which, spoiler alert, it did anyway. But he gets hit, and then the puck gets to him, and then he, tries to make a play from his knees, ends up getting a bad touch, turnover, 2-on-1 down low, and then they pop it in for the third goal. And then after that, I was like, okay, I don't think we're going to be able to come back from this, just from, how the game was going, how the teams are playing. But it was just that kind of hit in that play that I was just like, well, this is just another, like, this is a series where just nothing went right. Even though we did get 2 points the night before, I was like, there wasn't a lot to smile about this series.
No.
And then they made the power play goal to make it 4-1, which, again, this team, 10%, you can't let them score so many power play goals. But it is what it is. So that's, at that point, I was just frustrated. Kupka gets kind of a little bit of an insurance goal there at the end, or kind of a stat helper, garbage time goal. Then a lot of the festivities happened. Millar, Rogers, O'Coin, Ostrowski all get roughing calls within the last minute. Millar gets a 10-minute misconduct. But it was a Yeah, it kind of puts your, I don't know, it just put the team kind of in perspective of me, and it's just like, go Huskies woo, and I were kind of talking about it through the game. It's like, it's just, we got kind of a lot of grinders on this team and a lot of Jags, and we're just, if we don't get the consistency when it comes to the scoring. Molinar has been held off the goal scoring sheet since his surprising 7 goals from earlier in the season. He's been quiet. Okabe was quiet at the beginning, started to come around a little bit as late. Yeah, I mean, VT has been consistent, but at the same time, he was out this last game. So I mean, that's a big cannon in your arsenal that you're not able to tap on. And then again, the defensive woes continue. Lidke, again, terrible weekend, absolutely abysmal from all aspects. Worst I've seen him play. And then just Peart, I don't think he had a great weekend. Wiley, I think was
even
incredibly
Falk,
bad.
our heroic stay-at-home guy. I don't think he had a very good game, especially on Saturday. You mentioned the
Falk made one play that I think he was able to catch Laba on a breakaway or something along those lines.
That is right. But then there was that 2-on-1 where,
and then the 2-on-1 is like, well, there goes that goodwill.
Ewert didn't help him on that play either. He kind of sprung the 2-on-1 to begin with, and then Falk just went committed too early on the slide. I agree. The defense, not much of an improvement, maybe even slightly worse than last weekend. Like coming off the Saturday game, let's say last weekend. And again, you only gave up the 1 goal on Friday, but there was still way too many turnovers and offense created out of turnovers in both games. Like I said, if CC was just a little bit better, these games wouldn't have been necessarily very close. That's the other thing too. We kind of called this one where, yes, I mean, you had Laba and Veremyev get some points. The 2 goals in the third period on Saturday were those 2 players involved in that scoring. But it's the rest of the goals. It's Tommy Middleton.
Yeah,
who? Stanley Cooley. What? Zachariah Wisdom scored the 1 goal for him on Friday, and he is a top-line player. But, just his 6th goal of the season and 9 points. 9 points?
9
for Wisdom. A drafted player. He actually looks pretty decent for them. But, you weren't beaten by the star players this weekend necessarily. I will say Labo did stand out. I think he's going to be a good player. I can see part of his recipe for his overtime success too, because if you saw him, St. Cloud had like a 2-on-1 in overtime on Friday that I think Gross took the shot and was saved. And they just threw the pass to Laba, who was just standing at the blue line waiting for a breakaway. So suckholing a little bit, I think, which might be like that might be good strategy for 3-on-3 call-in hockey, because it's like, he's not going to be able to make it down to the play anyway. So might as well have him just hang out at the blue line. If they do save it, then he can just, that's clown hockey in just a perfect little sequence there.
And then out of that worst case scenario, you miss the pass, you're going to beat out the icing.
Right.
So, I mean, doesn't matter there.
So there it is. 3-on-3 enabling suckholing. So that's another check in the minus box for 3-on-3 hockey. But yeah, he looks like a good player. And he talk about speed, and Laba certainly has that. And so I think he's gonna be a good player. He already is. But beaten by more the depth guys for CC is not necessarily the best sign. And also face-offs, they were a little bit more even on Saturday, but it's seemingly all weekend the key face-offs, offensive zone face-offs for the Huskies. 90% of those, CC won those. And then on the flip side too, like offensive zone face-offs for CC, they were winning the lion's share of those. It's just like seemingly all the key draws you weren't able to win. And that was another factor in not being able to dictate play throughout the entire weekend.
Friday's game, Salquist was 4-13. 4 wins, 13 losses on
He doesn't take that much of a beating in the faceoff circle, typically.
I will say one thing I did like was that we did change up our power play and that structure. And we talked about it a little bit also against Omaha as well. But a lot less feeding of the one-timer. And maybe that's a little bit because
the guy had the flu.
Yeah, VT was gone. But, even on Friday, though, we were able to kind of work it down low a little bit more. And I thought that created a lot of really good opportunities that just ended up not clicking. So it's nice to have another kind of tool in the arsenal that I think is a good, other plan, especially if you can work it off of the one timing, and then you'd be able to, instead go down low with it and get some guys to overcommit. So I do appreciate that we've got something else there. And I did think that was kind of maybe a little bit of a bright spot, but just the I don't know, like there was just so much more bad that just trumps, obviously the power play. And then the stretch passes, like I said, they weren't connecting at all. We don't have wings coming back to support the breakout. And when we do, I think they take off a little bit too early, which gets our defense caught low 2-on-1.
A couple with unforced icings, as you're mentioning, kind of stretch passes that just aren't sharp, missing their mark, and then just going back down for an icing. I mean, it's a defensive zone face-off that you're probably losing that. And again, it's just, you're climbing uphill all weekend, and never were able to get on top and roll down the other side and get some forward momentum. Always chasing this weekend. It was some bad hockey actually to watch.
Yep. Exactly. Kind of wish that we had our bye weekend coming up. But instead, like you said, we got Miami in the.
If you're playing better, we could make the joke that this is a bye weekend coming up. But you got to take this team as seriously as a heart attack.
I mean,
they probably should have beaten North Dakota on Friday. But
Miami's Twitter account tweeted that they're up 4-2, and I quote tweeted and I said, "I'd be excited, but I know how this is going to end." And
it was
sure enough.
Yeah,
of course it was going to end like that with North Dakota coming back and winning it. So
watch them mount that 4-2 lead. A couple of those goals given up by Person were a little soft.
So
must have left the Cape back in Grand Forks. But he gets the final comeuppance when sweeping his former team.
So before we talk about that series, let's have probably the most undeserving POW of the weekend for this team. Who do you have for your POW?
Kyle Kupka.
Yeah.
I don't.
Kupka, actually, his game I really liked.
Yeah,
so.
I liked that he was going to be my POW. This is fairly simple, but it gives me an opportunity to talk about him for a little bit. And because I was sort of reminded when we were going through fringe guys, J.A.G s, as you've lovingly put them in this podcast, you're doing like the Ashan, Rogers, and like just give me like rank them kind of, and mentioning Rogers about like I'm not really sure what his role is, and he takes too many penalties and he doesn't score enough. That, after I was kind of thinking about it, it reminded me of a couple of years ago, the 21-22 season when we relaunched the show. It was an early season series at Lawson. The Huskies got smoked both games. And I remember you making the comment that you were flabbergasted one of those games that they pulled the goalie and Kupka was the extra attacker. And I launched into this thing like, what is Kyler Kupka? What is his role on this team? Because I'm not really sure what his purpose is. And you were kind of on the same page. He's developed.
Can I just say one thing quick? I think at that point when he hopped over the boards, I think he had like 2 goals on the season.
I'm not even sure if he had that many. I mean,
so
yeah, it was a head scratcher for good reason. It's not like we were out of line by saying that. His first 2 seasons, 10 points combined in the 1920 and 2021 seasons. So, I mean, this was a guy that was buried on your depth chart. That's not, he's not playing every game, just 12 games in the 1920 season and 23 in the 2021 season. That's COVID shortened, but still missing 6 or 10 games or so.
I just clicked from the pod, and he had 2 goals in the pod. One was assisted by Meyer. The
one
other
was a
one
game-winning goal. I think it was the first game in the pod against Western, and that one was one. I think it was his. Yeah, it would have been his first ever goal.
Yep.
As a Husky, because he went goalless in his, and that was a real garbage goal if I could remember. It like went off his butt cheek and in one of those. It was like a last minute goal too. I remember that for some reason. But fast forward a year after that, and we're scratching our heads and thinking, what exactly is this guy's role? Now fast forward another 2 years, he might be my favorite player on the team. I'm not saying he's the best player on the team, but his skill set in terms he plays a very physical game. You can tell that the opponents hate playing against him. And he's a weirdly effective grinder, but yet he'll put up a 30-point season this year. And perhaps, getting back to Rogers, perhaps that's what he molds into. Go Huskies Woo would love that, because Go Huskies Woo would then be close on his 40-point season prediction of Rogers. If you stack those two up together, and Rogers has got a similar build to Kupka as well. I mean, so I'm not going to give up on Rogers if I'm going to look at Kupka as maybe being the best possible outcome for a guy like Rogers. But yeah, getting back to Kupka, he's a guy that does a lot of the dirty work down in the corners, behind the net, cycling. He's sort of your Dan Cronic type. If he gets power play time, he's going to camp out front, get greasy goals like that. He's got a good shot, I think. And I think being a veteran player, I think he's a guy that the younger players look up to as well. So he wasn't like stellar this weekend because really no one was, but 2 goals on the weekend. And it gives me an opportunity to kind of sing his praises, which seeing how I was with this same player 2 years ago, or whatever, 30 months ago, I'm nice to say that he's developed into someone that from this group of players, he's going to be one of my faves looking back.
Yeah.
So
it's, when his second goal that has scored in his career was assisted by Jared Cockrell, that you've come a long way, kid. I'll say that. But I definitely agree. It's been fun watching him kind of grow in his transition from being a guy in and out of the lineup. You don't know what he is, finding his mold, also coming back too, as well, for his graduate, season, probably not going the way he expected it to, along with Anhorn, but it is, when you're talking about how he, kind of gets down in the corners and he grinds it out, also doesn't take a lot of penalties. Has only been whistled for 4 minor penalties so far on the season. So he's been able to, really be effective, really be a thorn in their opponent's side, and being able to deliver on the score sheet too, as he is our second leading overall scorer on the team right now with 23 points, 11 goals, 12 assists.
Leading scorer among the forwards.
Yep, exactly. So it's been, I agree with you. It's somebody also that I do agree we probably don't talk about enough. So
in that case, I do like the opportunity to just rave about Kupka a little bit. So hopefully next weekend, we won't have to give sort of more of a pity pow. That's a phrase there. No pity pow, but a powerful Powell. Hopefully that'll be the case next weekend.
Go Huskies woo, his thoughts. Mine as well, Kupka. Although I did almost want to give it to Bassie. And maybe that's more of a because you've been so bad to see you perform really well on Friday. Like you said, yeah, a lot of chances did end up going wide. But maybe that's a little bit also to, a big body, trying to get around him in the net, takes up a lot of space. That probably worked in his advantage as well. But overall, I have no qualms about how his play was. Yeah, he probably would like that third goal back, or the third CC goal back on Saturday's game, where Laba's goal shot kind of just, he rebound was able to kind of squirt free there. But overall, I was happy with his bounce back against his old team.
Yeah, I would think too, like prior to the third period on Saturday, I'm just like, well, even if Posh is healthy, which I'm not sure what his status is, but this weekend seems to be good enough for Bassie to at least like reassume the mantle of starting goaltender, like for 2 games a weekend. With the third period again, we saw some of the same issues that he's had the last couple of weekends rear its ugly head. But as you said, I would say 5 of the 6 periods, and then if you want to count the overtime, which he obviously had to come up huge on Friday, for the most part, this was a good weekend for him. And so I'm wondering, that kind of maybe puts any sort of goalie controversy to bed. Again, until this next weekend, we see some frightening play in Miami. Then we might have that same conversation coming back. But I think he did enough to not make it surprising if he's going to, not make it a question of who's going to be starting in net on Friday, because I'm fairly certain it'll be Bassie on Friday.
I thought Rogers played more meaningfully well. He seemed strong on the puck, caused some turnovers, and the forecheck. Ingram was good. I agree with Ingram especially. I thought he had a good weekend that didn't really come up on the score sheet, but he was able to kind of press and forecheck and assert some physicality. Okabe was a little too dipsy-doosy. New phrase. But he was concluding having seemingly 4 goals on the weekend. He healed all the shots alone between the dots. So, I remember especially one that had a grade A chance that just kind of whiffed it a little bit off the heel, and Mberko was able to make a really good save. Felt our defenseman was just getting blown by. Mayotte just saw something on film, was like, just skate around these guys. Salkwa scored, so that's nice. And then he went with Kupka. He's truly perplexed by this team, said, and yet we're still second in the conference. An outside shot at the Penrose. We control our own destiny. 48 points should be enough for first in the NCHC, good enough for second to 5 years. But anyway, he makes up the good point is that we've won 6 in a row against Miami, Western Michigan, and UMD earlier this season. So, those are 3 of the 4 teams we have left to play. So, it's got a, he kind of put that a little bit in perspective for me. Now how we're playing, I don't know. But I know Western isn't, lighting the world on fire. Minnesota Duluth has quite a few issues that they're dealing with, especially health wise. And, we talked about eligibility wise, but, no. And then obviously, like you said, here we got Miami, who This is the weekend, though, where I think anything less than 6 is a failure. I think, you need 6 points. You can't drop anything to them, especially if you want to keep in the race in the upper half. But, if we go through and we get like a 4 out of 6 points this weekend, it's going to look, I think it's going to look a little bit short, and we're going to be a little bit sad with those results if that's the case.
I mean, yeah, yes, but I can't be that confident. Same as what I was feeling back in October when you were previewing them coming up to start the conference slate. I agree that should be the expectation, or at least that's what we should have that standard, let's say. But I don't expect more than 3 points this weekend. Something tells me that they're going to drop one of these games. And I'd hope to be, I want to be proven wrong, but a team that hasn't won in over a month, a regulation game at least, I can't just be like, yep, put it in the books, 6 points. We should mention, I mean, this is a bad Miami team. And
Miami hasn't won in nearly a month.
They're a bad team and they're hurt too. So, their regular goaltender is Neaton. He got hurt in the middle of the last win they had, which was a win against Western Michigan 7 games ago. And this Bruno Braveris has started every game for them since, and they haven't won one of those games. Took a couple of these games to overtime. North Dakota, as we mentioned, had to tie that one up late on Friday and then win in overtime. And then they also took Duluth to overtime before losing the week before. But they're banged up. They're playing a backup in net who St. Cloud did see in that first series of the year. And that was the game where they won 6-rip. I remember being surprised. Like, that was his first game in college. And they've been doing, remember Miami was off to a cute little start, 4-1-1 coming into that series. And then Needham, I thought, played pretty well in the Friday game. And then kind of out of the blue, he starts this guy, Cole goalie, hadn't played at all in college, and he gets kind of lit up. And really from that series, they've settled into being the Miami that we know and love. Just one win in conference. That was that Western Michigan game in early January. I got to go back to, because I remember last year I did the thing where I counted up like all of the Januaries that they've had, even stretching back to the last couple of Blasi years. The winning percentage was like sub 10, it was like they were something like 5-33 and whatever amount of ties. Like this part of year, we're talking about St. Cloud getting into an annual tradition of having a January, February swoon. Well, that's that times a few factors with Miami, because this time of year, they don't get any wins, like period. And I mean, this February schedule for them, North Dakota, St. Cloud, and then they got to go to at Denver to close the month. I mean, these Husky games might be their best chance to get some W's this month. And so it's been a constant struggle for the Red Hawks yet again at 7 wins. Did we have an over-under on whether that they would crack double-digit wins? Because it's been a while for them. I mean, Bergeron hasn't done it since he's been there. His max is 8. He hasn't gotten to 9 wins yet. Their last double-digit win season was 18-19 when they won 11 games. And yeah, it's a program that's fallen on hard times. But yet the Huskies seem to struggle, especially in Oxford. I believe they've only had one sweep there since the start of the NCHC. They seemingly, no matter who the Miami team is on the ice, they're still able to get at least one win out of the Huskies. Like last year, Huskies controlled a game 7-3. That was three early goals, set the tone. But then 5-0 win for Miami the following game. John Waldron with the hat trick. It was like, who is this? Because he might have not had a goal prior to that either. He's having a decent year for them, 17 points. So I guess circle his name because he seems to play well against the Huskies. But so a sweep in Miami, even considering how bad this program has been for the last decade, never a sure thing for the Huskies for some reason or another. So let's hope that trend doesn't continue. I'd love to see the 6 points.
Last year was that perplexing, 7-3 the first game and then 5 rip that we got shut out with. And then prior to that, it was the 2020-2021 in Miami where that was a split. And then it was the 2019-2020 series. We did end up sweeping them. And then before that, we swept them.
So two sweeps. So they had a bit of a winning streak there towards the end of the Blasi years. But so let's hope we can get a reprisal of that sort of good fortune. Love to see it because if you sweep them here, then the roller coaster of emotions. I don't know if that puts you back onto bargaining or back onto depression. Is that the Office quote? Like, if I could be depressed, if I could get this whole office depressed, I'd be happy because they were. Or if I could get them all angry, I don't know. We need to get back to anger. Anger is a healthy emotion.
Anger's probably more enjoyment for our listeners too. If I'm incredibly angry, it's during the North Dakota series, during that recap, I talked about how we kept Reese Graber off the score sheet. And then we have, Laba, who for the most part we did up until, that last period where he was able to get that goal. So it's going to be kind of another situation here where, the two main pieces, Fletcher and Barbolini, that you're going to have to contain. You said Waldron. Yep, he's having a solid season as well, so I don't want to look past him too much.
He'll score a goal this weekend because he scored in every series that they played since he started his college career. He's my pick to click for Miami this weekend.
Sure enough. But, Fletcher with 11 goals, 11 assists, and then Barbolini, 9 goals, 12 assists. I feel like Barbolini also is kind of able to be kind of a thorn in our side, except I know he's been injured. So
I remember when I was watching the Friday game there, they were mentioning their rash of injuries that they've had. I know that the goaltender is out too, but it's very possible that this Fletcher could be out as well. No, he played this past weekend. He's been in the lineup, but some key contributors.
Barbolini hasn't played since CC. On the 19th,
and he's been a decent player, not just for this year, but for a couple of years now.
I feel like he's always been a thorn in our side. Yeah,
I think he was the leading scorer for him last year. That's not saying a ton because I think he led the team with like 23 points. But yeah, if he's going to be out, then that should be another good sign for the Huskies. But again, that's as you're saying, it's not been the star players other than like Jackson Blake, I suppose. But even the Omaha series, you left Mueller off the board, and so it hasn't been the top line guys have been killing it. It's been for these middle line, bottom six, and low scoring defensemen that have been pitching in a lot of offense lately against the Huskies. So got to watch out for all of them.
Yep. And I just really want to see some of these Huskies players get back going. I mean, maybe it's foolish of me to think like get Molinar back going, but we had, some really good work with Gross and Aucoin. Aucoin has been fairly quiet over the past couple of series. Ryman didn't get a shot this last weekend. Didn't play that great against Omaha, so that's probably the reason why. But I'd like to see him kind of back in the lineup with his speed. So it's, yeah, I just hope I see some good response out of this Husky squad here this weekend. And this is the time where we desperately need it. Like I said, we desperately need 6 points, and to, a loss here can really tank our pairwise when it comes to tournament prospects.
Yeah, and you're mentioning like Molinar. I mean, he hasn't scored in 13 games since the first Duluth game, which I believe was the game winner. Yeah, late third period game winning goal. He took a major the next game, and that's the butterfly effect for his season, because he's got 2 assists and no goals since then. But if we want to recapture some of that Molinar magic, he had the hat trick. He had the hat trick against Miami, against Bruno Bavaris on November 4th. And that was sneak preview to the upcoming Herbies after the season. That might be a goal of the year nominee. One of those goals I remember being a highlight reel goal for Molinar.
That's true.
And so his peak of his college career, arguably, was that series, that game against Miami. So if he can channel that, because I think maybe you're talking about Jags, and let's talk a little bit about the Jags. We went through the Jags a little bit last week. It wasn't contextualized as we're going through the Jags. We were just like, how do you like Ashan? Really, is kind of what the whole point of that was.
Yeah.
Do you kind of?
We should just first define for listeners who are not aware. JAG is just short for just another guy.
Not to be confused with the David James Elliott procedural
Judge Associate General,
which spawned which long-running series with several spin-offs of its own. Do you know, like the tree of spin-offs that starts with JAG? What did it spawn?
I'm going to guess NCIS.
Correct. It's probably the more famous show at this point, but JAG started it all. So not that, but just another guy. So would you put like Ashan in that group? Do you think Ashan's just another guy, or you feel like he kind of elevates above the JAG label?
I think he elevates, in my opinion.
But all the rest of those bottom 6 guys, like I would almost put Molinar in that group. The JAG kind of had a month there where he was un-JAG, but for the majority of his career, he's been JAG.
Majority. I would say that's fair. I guess when I think of JAGs, I also think of guys really in and out of the lineup. And
yeah,
like, so by that definition, yes, Ashan is. I put him, I guess, on an upper level of JAG. Put him into the NCIS category.
Yeah, so like this is the difference between last week and this week. Last week we were kind of like, I like Gross, and Ashan, a cute little player, and Rosborough's got his game here and there, and now this week we're like,
I don't think I've ever said that about Rosborough.
I said
first off,
I said it's Rosborough. But now we're like, they're just a bunch of Jags. So is it we should kind of land on something here, because I like some of these guys.
Why?
Like Ryman, you're talking about.
Why do we have to land on anything? I don't think we need consistency.
And let's just say JAG is not a permanent label. We're not branding them with a hot iron here that says you're JAG and you can't be unjagged. Because a lot of these guys are freshmen. Ryman, it's not a guy that's getting regular every game work. Even Ashan, for as much as we both like him, he's not like a everyday regular in the lineup. And so, whereas I think a guy like Molinar more fits that bill because he is an everyday guy. And he has been for several years. And so there's points where you can elevate yourself out of that label. But when we're struggling to the extent that we have been for so long now, then that's when the labels can become more and more apparent. And we're sort of waiting for some contributions. And you said that, they go through waves, because we had like Rosborough had a couple of weeks where he was all right. And a coin is another good example where he had a couple of weeks they were like, wow, might have something here. And now he's been real quiet for in equal amount of time that he was impressive. And perhaps that's just the the way that it goes, especially younger guys who are sort of still fighting to get regular playing time, that, yeah, you're going to just count on spurts of this guy playing well now and then this guy playing well, and hopefully they overlap a little bit. But ultimately, I think you're going to depend on your top six. And maybe that's where it's like we should be more concerned about the Molinars and, Sahlquist. I know we've talked plenty about him, but, Akabi as well. Like, we've seen flashes from Akabi lately, but it's still not quite clicking to the extent that we've thought. Ingram's the one guy, like, we're talking like Kupka might be my favorite player, not necessarily the best player on the team. I think Ingram's close for me, saying that he's the best player on this team. I don't know if that's like a hot take or not, but the way that he's been improving the last, I don't know, he's like the one bright spot since 2024 started, because it seems like he's been able to be more assertive on the ice. Because he's not just, I'm just going to shoot every time I have the puck now. He has a sense about him that he knows kind of when to play make and when to take a shot. I thought he was fairly solid this last weekend, and different, I think, in a way that he was in the first half of the season, or obviously last year. It seems like he's maturing, and it's good to see. And I kind of see him, like, if I see a good play developing, I'm hoping that I see 34 with that puck, because I'm almost more confident than anyone else on the team that he's gonna do something productive with it. But yeah, I mean, so those are the guys that I really look at as far as the top six. That's who you're going to ride or die with. Bottom six, there are always going to be some shuffling, and we can expect to see some growing pains within that group. But as long as we can get some contributions, that's going to be a bonus. So I don't know if that made any sense, but yeah, you're gonna have some Jags. This isn't the 85 Oilers here. It's not like we're stacked up four lines deep, but I don't know. We're anything to add to the Jag talk?
I have never seen an episode of Jag or NCIS.
I don't think I have either.
In
bits
all
and pieces
honesty,
here and there, but
I'm not a big procedural fan. Except I guess if you call Psych a procedural, I'm a big fan of Psych.
I've seen a fair amount of Law and Order, but that's like
Characters Welcome on USA Network. My wife loves Law and Order, and but she doesn't want to she wouldn't like go on like a streaming service and pick Law and Order. Like, she wants TNT to tell her what Law and Order she wants to watch. So
I always thought that was the best way to do Seinfeld, instead of like binging it or like prior to it being available on Hulu. Just throw it on TBS. What do you got for me? That's almost the best way.
You need kind of streaming services need like a random episode generator where you just, I suppose you can make like an app for that. Just like, which episode should I watch? And there you go. I do agree with you in terms of Ingram's development, and that's been incredibly surprising, especially as I've been watching his game specifically more after I said he's quietly had X amount of points earlier in the season. I would still kind of go with VT as the guy who is, the guy I want to have the puck.
Other obvious candidate. I suppose you could put Anhorn in that category as well, but we're just kind of limiting ourselves to forwards, I guess, in this discussion.
But as far as like going through some of the Jags there on the team, I was wondering if, like, are we being maybe too harsh and expecting too much from this group? Because, going into the season, I was talking about how, I was incredibly concerned about their center depth and how, we don't have a lot of big name players committed for this year. The biggest name was Barrett Hall, who's really been up and down, I felt, throughout this whole season. But, it felt like some of the bigger names here are going to be coming next year.
Yes.
With Bernovic and Thorson probably coming in next year as well. So it's, maybe just seeing some of the guys that are in these, I'll say it, lesser Canadian junior leagues coming in, maybe we're expecting a little bit too much. And I'll put Clark in that situation too, because I thought he did not play very well this last weekend either. That, maybe in line with the Kupka and what he grew out to be, maybe I'm putting a little bit too much emphasis on, how Gross is or how Ryman is or anything along those lines. And maybe that's just not fair.
And I think, like, coming into the year, we were both confident in this team. You were second place prediction. I was first.
Correct.
And I think our thing is, yes, the center depth is a big question mark. And yes, this freshman class doesn't appear to be as high, that has as high of a ceiling as future classes will. Perhaps there is no one true standout, like one of either Bernovic or Thorson. Like, even with Warren Clark being a drafted player, considering his youth, like being 18, we didn't, like, at the beginning of the year, I wasn't even expecting him to play as much as he has already this year. Like, he's been benched a few times, but I figured it'd been more regular. Like, he's kind of a part-time player. He's been mostly in the lineup through this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree that he's had good weekends and bad. And with the rest of the defense, it's been mostly bad the last month. But my thing, I was more banking on the upperclassmen carrying you. And maybe it's not fair to call out Anhorn as being the top scorer on the team, but I think we can agree that he's not hit our expectations, which, yes, may have been too high, but he's left a little bit to be desired. And Okabe too, expecting a lot more from him. We were thinking like a 40-point season based on his trajectory, like basically adding 10 points every year roughly, and thinking a fifth year from him, he's going to get into that 40-point range. It's not going to happen for him this year. And he's been playing better of late, but that first half of the year was a huge disappointment. And so that's, I think, more to blame. And I think Bassey struggles throughout the year as well. I think, again, this season's not over, but if we're writing a summary of how the story is unfolded to this part, with still a third act to go, there's still a third of the conference schedule left to play, 8 games left. So season's far from over. But if we were to write the summary of the first 2 thirds of the season, I would chalk up the disappointment, because I do think if we were going to summarize a out of the pairwise, so at this point of the season, based on our preseason expectations, which, yes, you had them at second, and that's where they are right now, but they would be out of the pairwise position. I would think that you'd have to classify that as a disappointment to this point where we're at right now. And I think the main reason of that is that your upperclassmen have let you down more so than relying on the freshmen, which you've had some contributions here and there. And I agree, it's not like been one true standout. Hall has been hot and cold, but I don't tend to lump the majority of the blame on those players rather than the ones that you have the experience with and you have more solidly founded expectations, like we had with guys like Kabi and Anhorn. So, and that was what I was hanging my hat on with the October stretch, and sort of being like, yeah, rebuilding. Let's see if we got something with these young players, seeing something that we can build on, get them some regular action. Yeah, put Warren Clark in every game now, because this season might not be a NCAA appearance kind of season. But then that seemed to, when the team was humming in November and December, you got those contributions. Not every game, and it was not the same guy every game, but you had Jack Ryman pop in a game-winning goal, or you'd have a Rosborough play very well, or Grant Ashan scoring some key goals, and you're able to get solid contributions from those young players, even to the extent where they were still sort of picking up the pace, the slack for guys like Okabe during when the season was going well for them. But now we're here out of pairwise position, and we're looking for culprits. I guess my instinct is to look at the veterans before I look towards more of the role players. But I can see they shoulder part of the blame as well. The fact that, no one's really stepped up and emerged, other than I would say Werner. Like Werner's an every game player. And it's not like he's putting up a 50-point season, but you can see the kinds of contributions he has. And like at this point of the year, you'd be surprised if he was out of the lineup because he's got a pretty solid role, face-off dot, penalty kill. Like he does a lot. And he's kind of a Swiss Army knife out there and scoring you an overtime winner this past weekend. So other than that, even Hall's a guy that hasn't really proven to be a two game a weekend player. A lot of that is due to injuries, but I tend to lay the blame more on the team leaders rather than the rookies. So, but it's a good conversation to have.
Yep. Werner has eight points in the last 9 games.
It's a good run.
He's been incredibly strong. Anything else kind of going on for this upcoming series around the horn for anything that kind of piqued your interest when looking around college hockey? Anything else on the men's side you want to touch in before we talk about the women's against Wisconsin?
So you mentioned we've talked about North Dakota sweeping Miami, one of those in overtime.
Oh, wait, hold on one second. I forgot one thing. Speaking of Miettinen, just back to our prop bets. So the over-under for Miettinen combined points was 45.5. So right now they are 12 points away combined. Like I said, Werner, 8 points in the last 9 games. Obviously, VT has had a strong season as well. So 12 points away the rest of the season. Sahlquist, 1 goal left before he hits his. Which do you think happens first, if any of them happen? First off, do you think Sahlquist gets points. 1 goal, or do both Miettinens combine for 12 points?
Well, you got to go with Sahlquist there. That's not a sentence I've said often.
Do you have to?
I would think it's more possible for one guy to get 1 goal rather than 12 points get combined over 2 players. I mean, Sahlquist could get that in an empty netter. That would require St. Cloud
he'll be out on the ice for it.
And that would require St. Cloud to have a late lead in which the other team was tempted to pull their goaltender, which haven't had that situation in a while.
Haven't had that.
I'll still go with Sahlquist.
When was the last empty netter at all?
Because even those the Michi games, those wouldn't have prompted goaltender pulls. Maybe the first game in Omaha might have been an empty netter there. If it wasn't that, then
yes, it was. Kupka had the empty netter in the Omaha.
Because Michigan, there wasn't an empty netter goal. The 2 Duluth games, those were tight to the very end, 1-goal games. The Miami series, that 6-0 game, I don't think they pulled Barberis. And the 3-2 game, actually, Miami had an extra attacker goal, so I know there wasn't an empty netter there. Maybe the Alaska series? That might be the only empty netter they have this year. Because the Friday
Kupka one?
Maybe the Friday Alaska game would be the only other one I can think is a possibility. Check that. No.
Yeah.
No, I'm looking at the Saturday game for Alaska. Yeah, no empty netter in the Friday win versus Alaska. And obviously none in Mankato when you were swept, and you only beat St. Thomas by a 1-0 score. So I think Western Michigan, was any of those? not on Saturday, and not on Friday. I think they just got the one empty netter all year. So let's change that. Let's get an empty net. If we get an empty net goal this weekend,
not, and let's win by 4 or 5. One person who is not shy about losing by one more goal is Brian Nadolski.
This is true.
Who even pulled a hola and then who went back out to dive and make a really nice save in that second game, which again, it's a Saturday Sunday series, so we're going to be going kind of back and forth when it comes to that, so I apologize. No, well, anything else around? You were talking about Miami and North Dakota.
So
I'm sorry.
Let's do that.
Let's just do it. Sorry, other conferences.
We can get back to the end of the show if we really want to.
Okay, sounds good. Just such a great transition that I had, and I just blew it.
You're good.
I'll edit all of that out. So no, I won't. So women's Huskies, Jojo Chobak gets the goaltender of the week for her performance on the Saturday game, the first game, with the 2-1 overtime loss. Taylor Lynn scores again early. Huskies can score early, just not as often. As the game kind of went on, Wisconsin flexed their muscles a little bit, ended up outshooting the Huskies 47-15, or I'm sorry, 47-25 on the game. But Wisconsin ended up tying it in the second period, and then scoreless in the third. Overtime comes, and then 3-on-3 is just a little too much. Caroline Harvey with the goal, and able to really cement her status here in the WCHA, because she had a heck of a play as well. Just kind of all weekend, just a dominant force back there. Saturday's game, put $1 in the jar. Sunday's game, 5-2 lost with empty netter. Again, a goal, getting the lead. Soriel with the goal, with her 6th of the season. So for a freshman coming in, she's been quite the bright spot for the Huskies. Harvey with a wonderful power play goal in the second period, and then talking about people who not able to pop on the score sheet much, but able to really be a thorn in the Huskies side. Happens on the women's side too, with Lainey Potter scoring 2 goals, in fairly quick succession within 3 minutes of each other. Second and her third goal of the season. Taylor Lynn made it interesting. I made it 4-2 with the extra attacker goal with the 11-minute mark. So Adolski's going hard and fast with the pulling the goalie. But empty netter made it 5-2 for Wisconsin. It's taking Wisconsin obviously to overtime is getting a point out of there. JoJo really standing on her head. Incredibly strong game from her, and just not able to really match Wisconsin's firepower. Saturday's game or Sunday's game, kind of a little bit more of the same. Not outshot as bad, and there was even some instances there in the second period. I thought we had quite a few chances too, quite a few good looks, unable to kind of even that game up. So watching that game, I was really happy with the Huskies' effort, but just not really enough to tame the Badgers.
I did think it was a pretty entertaining weekend of hockey. The Saturday game in particular, I thought was, like, of the 4 Huskies games this weekend, that was probably the most entertaining one to watch for me. Yes, the shot advantage was pretty tilted for Wisconsin, but the Huskies were able to get like a lot of, I thought, surprising considering Wisconsin, but a lot of rush opportunities, 2-on-1s that they were able to create. Like their scoring chances, there was a lot of grade A's in those scoring chances. And it was a shame that they weren't able to extend their lead. They had plenty of opportunities to do so. Some good goaltending from Wisconsin, which I came into the weekend kind of thinking that was their weak spot. They certainly stepped up this weekend, getting a pretty garbage goal for the Huskies to start the game on Saturday, the first game. You'll take them however they come. That one was certainly not a highlight reel goal, but had some opportunities. There was a great save that Gervais made on, I think it was Gentry. Gentry had another good weekend, I thought. Missed that overtime session on Saturday because she crashed in the boards late, like as the buzzer was going off.
That was a scary moment.
And, I had to get the trainer out there, and you're kind of wondering if that's going to be a lingering injury. Like, she's had some injury issues already this year, but she was back on Saturday, or ding again, back on Sunday for game 2. And I thought she played another good game on Sunday. But so a couple of key moments there were St. Cloud could have made that a 2-0 game, but Wisconsin was able to keep it to 1-0, then tie the game. And, Harvey see just how much she can take over a game there, kind of just takes the puck and says, you know what, I'm going to end this game. And top shelf goal there, tucks it in somehow past J.A.G, who, I thought of the two goalies, she was the better one this weekend for the Huskies. I thought she was excellent. Not to put anything aside from Ahola, another kind of ho-hum great performance from her, keeping the Huskies in the game for as long as she could on Sunday. But J.A.G, to me, got the upper hand of the two goalies this weekend.
I do have a little bit of beef with the NCAA hockey Twitter account who said you can't give Harvey this much room. And I'm like, it's 3-on-3. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of room. Like what? She made a hell of a play. There's not really much you could do there.
Right. Yeah. She's one of the best players in college hockey. And on that kind of stacked team, for her to stand out to the extent that she does from the blue line is really saying something. But
Jake Baskin tweeted out that she thinks that Harvey would be the best defenseman in the PWHL as well.
I'll take his word for it. I don't think that's much of a stretch. I can't say I'm an expert PWHL mind, but I would say that Jake Baskin probably is, based on his knowledge. So she's an excellent player, and we saw why. And mentioning last week the series in St. Cloud about how even those games were in terms of shots and possession, slight edge for Wisconsin in those metrics, but St. Cloud able to kind of hang with them. Keep in mind though, that Harvey was not able to play those games. You see the difference that she makes on this team, where not only is she a stalwart defenseman, but she can step in and create game-winning plays like that in the extra session as well. So it's disappointing, but to get beat by a player of that caliber makes the sting a little less, I suppose. What I'll say too, kind of what made it good atmosphere all weekend at LeBron, good crowds. They seem to do these Saturday, Sunday series frequently there. I don't know if that's because they want to have an opportunity for the women to kind of play an isolated game rather than going up against a men's game. And so because the men's team hosted the Gophers this weekend. But I like that. It gave me a good opportunity. I'd rather watch a game on Sunday afternoon than Friday afternoon.
Correct.
Because I don't have to bring my iPad into work. So I like the energy, and it seemed like, when Wisconsin, they get behind both games, but then they're able to tie it up and then obviously win on Sunday and then win going away on Saturday. But you could tell that Wisconsin, this was a big weekend for them. Like, St. Cloud's not just the pushover that they were for so long. And that gave me a little something to hold on to after a 1-point weekend. As I said, like, this team is taken seriously by the upper echelon now. And,
Harvey's celebration was a little bit over the top, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, she was excited to get a game-winning goal against a team like that gave her a fight.
She's probably not doing that against Bemidji.
Yeah.
And if you can take that as a sign that St. Cloud has like risen to the level of legitimacy in such a short time. Now that's kind of I don't know. It's not the best prize you can take. Like, hey, they finally take it seriously. Like, the prize you want is points and wins. Because time's running out of the season here. And from where we're sitting now, I was doing some looking at the pairwise after this series. We just got 3 weekends of regular season games left, and then the playoffs, obviously. But so time's a ticking, and I see some separation in terms of the pairwise. For my lights, it looks like the top 6 in pairwise is pretty rock solid. Like, I don't see movement from this group of teams. The top 6: Ohio State, Wisconsin, Clarkson, Colgate, Minnesota, and Cornell. Cornell's been playing pretty well of late. Beat Clarkson over this past weekend, which is a big win for them. They've also gotten wins against Quinnipiac earlier this year, beat St. Lawrence. They've actually beat Clarkson both times. They played them once in overtime. So that's solidified their playoff positioning, and ECAC has 2 more weekends of regular season play before their playoffs start, and they've got bottom feeders in the ECAC. So, and yes, if you lose those games, that can cause you to sink, but women's hockey, it's a little less parity. Like, it's going to be much more surprising if Union can beat Cornell, whereas like similar like positioning in the pairwise is, you can't take those games for granted on the men's side. On the women's side, you can kind of chalk these wins up, fairly certain. So I don't see Cornell dropping below 8. And then I see a group of 4 teams straddling the bubble. The last 2 at-large teams and the first 2 outside the bubble. These are St. Lawrence, Minnesota Duluth, Quinnipiac, and St. Cloud. There's a fairly big jump in terms of RPI from St. Cloud to Connecticut at 11. And so I don't see Connecticut, although I think we both picked them as our Hockey East representative in the tournament. This last Pick the Field episode at the beginning of 2024. Pretty much a long shot for them to be a at-large team, like within the top 8. But those other 4, the other 2 spots of at-large is likely, like 95%, going to be between 2 of those 4 teams: St. Lawrence, Duluth, Quinnipiac, and the Huskies. And saying that, I still think the Huskies have a shot here. And considering the upcoming schedule, they're playing all teams above them in the pairwise, coming up with the Gophers first this coming weekend. And then they got Duluth. Well, I guess not, because they got Bemidji to end the season.
Bemidji,
but
yeah.
The next 2 series, playing teams that you can gain in pairwise by winning. I think you got to win at least 2 of these games, if not more. Like, you might want to take a majority of the points against Duluth in Duluth, particularly because that would go a long way towards securing home ice. I should mention, with Duluth's wins this weekend against St. Thomas, they have jumped the Huskies in the standings for the WCHA, which you kind of seeing that coming based on the schedule. St. Cloud is kind of able to keep a hold on them, even with getting swept by Ohio State and dropping those games against Mankato and St. Thomas, because that was the weekends that Duluth was playing the Ohio States and the Wisconsins. But now Duluth is being able to get into their softer part of the schedule, and they took care of business against Mankato this past weekend. And so we'll see if they can continue to, hold serve. Maybe it would be the cross sport analogy against St. Thomas this coming weekend, playing down in St. Thomas. And this is when the Huskies play a home-and-home with the Gophers. You're really circling that series in Duluth next weekend, the 16th and the 17th. It's going to go a long way towards dictating who's going to have the home ice spot. The it's most likely going to be those two teams in the first round of the WCHA playoffs. And seeing those 4 teams like battle it out for the last 2 spots in pairwise, like you can kind of see like it's probably going to be one of either St. Cloud and Duluth and one of those 2 ECAC teams. I don't see one league taking both of those spots. So
now St. Cloud is 20 points ahead of Minnesota State. And Minnesota Duluth is 15 points behind Minnesota. So there's 16 points remaining? 18 points remaining.
So yeah, St. Cloud has clinched at least a 5th place.
Yeah, so we've clinched a 5th spot at least. And it is essentially one win for the Gophers will make that
1 win or 1 loss for St. Cloud would clinch them no higher than 4th.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just put it simply, they're either going to be 4th or 5th.
Yeah, they're either, and Minnesota Duluth as well, obviously. Yes. So this essentially is a locked up series.
Yeah.
And with us two so close in the pairwise, I mean, these are going to be, incredibly important games. And that's where home ice, I think, can, really help us.
I think whoever gets home ice is winning that series. And it might take 3 games either way.
Mm-hmm.
I liked how St. Cloud played against Duluth at the Herb earlier this season. And it's tough for them to win up in Duluth. That doesn't happen often. But we'll see. I mean, let's not get too ahead of ourselves because we got the Gophers this coming weekend. And, we've been talking for a while here about we're just not all that impressed with a 22-5-1 team.
Right?
But it's kind of true. I mean, they just went through the also-rans in 3 straight series, sweeping Bemidji, Mankato, and St. Thomas. But I mean, 2-0 against Bemidji, 3-1 versus Bemidji, 4-3 against Mankato, 2-1 in overtime against Mankato, 3-1 and 5-2 against St. Thomas. And I watched a good part of the second game at St. Thomas, and yeah, that was a tie game about halfway through the game. And so they're early in the season, like the first time they played St. Thomas, they were winning 8-0 and 4-0.
Bemidji State was 9-2, 9-1, and then come back with a 2-0, 3-1. So it's they're ripe for the picking.
We'd hope. I mean, again, I'm talking about thinking that Duluth's beatable, but I mean, the Gophers are never like a lock.
That's
like
true.
An opponent, even if they are in a down year for their standards. But
I'm ready for Murphy Himlerova Part 2.
Yeah, I'm sure those 2 players are as well. No love lost between those 2. Probably have let's say over under total penalties for those 2 players against in the weekend. I'll set it at 3.5 for the 2 games.
Over.
I was going to say 4.5. Would you still take over at 4.5?
Yeah.
All right. I'll put it at 4.5.
4.5.
So,
I picked the over.
And there might be like how many of those are going to be coincidentals?
1
with both of those, with both of those players involved. It's she had Murphy 3 penalties she took in that game at the Herb. It would have been the Tuesday game in December.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was the game where Himlerova got ran. I can't remember. It wasn't Murphy that ran her, but it was in retaliation to a play that another hit on Murphy. And so things kind of got out of control there at the end of the game.
And then Bowlby went after Murphy and just shoulder right in the jaw, and Abby Murphy spun around.
That's right. Murphy took a dive penalty earlier in the game.
Yep.
She gets on people's skin, I think it's fair to say. And she can score the puck too. The problem with for the Gophers is that there hasn't been as good of a supporting cast around Murphy as previous teams for the Gophers have. But it's still obviously a team you got to reckon with. This Bouvang for them, she's got 32 points. She had a goal and an assist. She assisted on the Hemp goal. Hemp has also been a good player and a player that's played well against the Huskies this year as well. And so this isn't necessarily Heisey and Zumwinkle, but Murphy's a pretty good player in her own right and plays a physical and an offensive game. I mean, 91 penalty minutes this year for Abby Murphy. That's gotta be close to the league lead. I can't imagine.
Not only the league lead,
it's got to be like 20 minutes ahead. Like, what is her lead in that category?
The lead in that category is 32 minutes. She has 91 penalty minutes. And next from Lindenwood, Rachel Goff and Caitlin Cielo from Assumption both have 59.
She's like the Rick Tocchet of women's college hockey, because he would put up like 40 goal seasons with 300 penalty minutes.
Yeah.
I think Rick Tocchet, I think I saw this recently. He's the career leader in Gordie Howe hat tricks, like in all-time NHL history. I think he's got like 19 or 20 of them. Gordie Howe only had like 2, I think, in his whole career. Like, it's kind of a myth how that became a name for him. But having the goal, the assist, and the fight was actually a Rick Tocchet. That's the all-time leader. But so yeah, she's a pest.
Maserati from Rensselaer leads the men in penalty minutes with 75.
Wow.
So
is there like a game? I'm going to go with her game log here, because I wonder if there's like one that's she just took like 20 minutes. Well, this last game against St. Thomas, 17 against St. Thomas.
12 against Bemidji. Yeah, 17.
Active game, 2 goals, an assist, and 17 penalty minutes. I wonder, so she got a game misconduct. Have we heard if that was that comes with like some discipline?
Ooh,
that'd be kind of nice, right? I mean, I'd be sad because
not good for my over under.
It would. Well, she still might hit that in one game.
That's true.
So
yeah, do you want to change the over under?
I actually like that now with because Himmelrovo will pick up her slash. She'll cover her load, but Murphy she can do that in one game just fine, I think. So it's if you are able to check that, let me know. It looks like 3 games this year with odd number of penalty minutes, which means that she took majors in those games. So yeah, she's getting a couple of majors involved. Not many games without any penalty minutes. Like she's gotten to know the Ritter Arena penalty box bench quite well this year.
Mm.
And so keep an eye out for that. She is not making friends in the WCHA. Let's put it that way. But I think too, sort of with the second half with Minnesota, I mean, just
I don't see anything. So
okay,
we're going to assume she plays.
Interesting too, like who's going to be in net. We've come to know and love. Don't Call Me Daughter, Eddie Vedder's child, Skylar Vedder, in net for the Gophers. Got in both games against the Huskies earlier this year, but chased in both of those Ohio State games. Yes, Ohio State is elite, but it seems like her grasp on the starting job since that Ohio State series is no longer. I mean, she actually came in to relieve Lucy Morgan in one of those Ohio State games. So it looks like they've been on a split between Vedder and Lucy Morgan, who's a St. Lawrence transfer. So seeing as that's how they've been playing it of late, really the second half of the season, kind of a full split between those two in the similar vein of Chobak and Ahola. I would kind of expect to see Morgan get one game and Vetter get the other. And so Morgan's been the slightly better goaltender for them this year. And we'll see how the Huskies can react to seeing a goalie, likely, if they are going to see Morgan this weekend, a goalie they haven't seen before, see how they are able to pounce on her. But we've got the St. Cloud's got the home game on Friday. Is that right?
Correct.
So home game on Friday and then at Ritter on Saturday. We think, right? Like this isn't any CHN shenanigans because they don't have a time listed for the Saturday game. So I hope that's not like a Sunday game that they just haven't updated on their website. You'll figure it out. You'll tweet it out, right? If there's any game time changes that are not reflected here on the CHN webpage.
Yeah, with how reliable they are.
But I mean, let's hope that we can get at least a win out of this weekend. It's easier said than done, obviously, but considering you still got to really hustle. If I'm still on the taking points in half of the games against the top 4 teams in the WCHA, in order to complete that task for the season, you need to get points out of 3 out of the next 4 games. So I get this series against the Gophers and next weekend at Duluth. That seems like a tall task, but
especially
it's doable.
That's, just looking at it, that's 5 straight losses for the Huskies, including one against St. Thomas, which was an annoying one.
It's deja vu all over again with both men's team and the women's team are hitting the skids at the same time.
Yeah.
Not fun. Not great, Bob.
Not great, Bob.
So let's go then around the league. Anything men's or women's that you kind of want to cover that piqued your interest over this last weekend?
I have one maybe odd nit to pick with the NCHC. Mentioning the North Dakota series, 5 out of 6 points over Miami. The Western Michigan and Denver split out Magnus and Western with its second rout over Denver this year. Beat them 7-3 in Kalamazoo earlier this year, and then 7-2 on Saturday. And then Omaha sweeping Duluth. But one thing I've been noticing this with the NCHC schedule, it's like this last weekend. Both Denver and CC played home games this weekend. And so those games are starting at the same time. So we have one East Coast game with Miami, one Central time zone with Omaha, and then 2 in the Mountain. Can't you make it where and then last weekend there was no games in Colorado between, hosted by either Denver or CC. Can't there be a way that we can always have one late game, spread these games out? For this coming weekend, we've got 2 games on the schedule because we're in the bye week. Every team is going to get a bye either this week or next. So we got this week coming up. We got home games with Western and Miami, both teams in the East time zone. So they're both back starting at the same time. So you got to pick one or the other. There's no way that you can bounce around and catch both of these games. Wouldn't it be better for the conference to sort of try to have fans be able to catch more than one game on a weekend? Have a Miami St. Cloud series and then have Denver host a series. You can catch 2 games. So I don't know why you have both Colorado teams host on the same weekend. I don't know why you have both East Coast or East time zone teams host on the same weekend. 3 or 2 weeks ago, I suppose, you had Omaha, St. Cloud, and Duluth all host the same weekend, all in the same time zone, all starting at the same time. It's can we just shuffle things around a little bit? It seems like there's 1 week a year, one weekend, where there's a game that starts at 6, one that starts at 6:30, one that starts at 7, and one that starts at 7:30. And so you're in heaven because you can catch the other games during the intermission that you're watching. You can flip back and forth. You can watch most of the late game after the first game's done. but that's like a rarity. It happens like once a year. I wish that they could. You feel like they have the power to make a schedule that's a little bit more conducive to multiple game watching or channel surfing, if there is such a thing on an app. So that's my weird rant for the week.
I mean, maybe it'll make it a little bit easier once Arizona State gets in.
I bet not, because I bet there's going to be a weekend where CC, Denver, and Arizona State are all at home.
Are all at home, and those are the 3 games. You got a point. Yeah, it always annoys me, like, just like this weekend as well. Like, that part doesn't annoy me as much as, I guess, the times are a little bit staggered with a 7:00 and a 7:05 Eastern start.
I thought at first you were going to say something like one of them started at 7:30 and the CHN app was wrong. But no, you're just going with a 5-minute extra start, which is what CHN says. So that very well could be wrong.
So yeah, exactly. But it's like, push one back a half hour. Like don't give me an intermission to look at, because I mean, everyone's intermission is garbage. Just I mean, and especially when you get down to college level 2, it's bad.
So some of them just put the freeze frame of the Zamboni.
Of the Zamboni going by.
And like the North Dakota's like one of the few that actually have, like, in St. Cloud too, that actually have like a intermission program of some sort. But I will say too, was watching that, because one of the reasons I kind of wanted to go to Miami, other than just scratching it off the list, be the last NCHC venue that I will have gone to. But another reason was their streaming.
Their feed.
Their feed's always terrible. They must have made some upgrades, because I don't know if you caught any of this past weekend.
I did catch the North Dakota.
It looked like it was in HD. It looked like it was much closer to the action.
Closer. Yeah, you could see the puck. It was, which I didn't talk about it, but Friday's game against CC, I thought that one we were filming from the moon. Like, I felt in that game, I felt like the camera was so far away.
It was the same with the Huskies women's games this weekend at Wisconsin. Those cameras were from Door County, I think, a little far off. But I thought, like, the Saturday game against CC, I thought that one was like just zoomed in more, like you can see a little bit of the puck. Yeah, Miami historically has been really bad, and then happy to see when I saw, I was like, oh, all right, we get, like, I can see the action, I can see the puck, that's good. Oh, I didn't get to my biggest pet peeve though of the CC and their television, their camera. It's like, why are you doing these WWF quick cuts to a different camera angle when the play is going on? It's like, it's like all of a sudden you get the scoring chance and you want a quick cut to the corner angle for some reason, which is objectively one of the worst places to watch a game. And so you're trying to, like, jar yourself, like, wait, what's going on? And then you quick cut back anyway. And it's just like, all you do is just ruin a chance to see a good scoring opportunity by doing this quick cut to a camera angle that you don't know what you're going to see. And it just, it kept doing that over and over again. And I've decided it ticks me off a little bit more than the penalty box cam, which thankfully Omaha doesn't do anymore. But at least the penalty box cam, you know what's coming. It's just so random when all of a sudden you're going to quick cut to a random camera shot somewhere else. It's like, why are you trying to be too cute? Like, just use that camera for replays like you should. Don't just quick go to it during when the puck's in motion. Just terrible producer job. Whoever's that, just, you're garbage. Stop it. And I didn't even realize it until like the third period. I'm like, oh wait, why am I listening to these announcers? I forgot to do the KVSC stream on Friday. I did it on Saturday, but on Friday, and that announcer for them, the play-by-play guy, he strikes me as odd. He seems like an AI more than like a colorful announcer. Like, he's the same guy. He was doing the same shtick, the last 2 years when they were 7th place in the conference. But listening to him, this is the same exact team, because back then it was just like, oh, the shucks, they lost 5 rip. It's just the bounces just go this way. And now it's just like, this team is doing really good. And he's just very odd. I don't even know his name, and I think that's best because again, I think he's just like a hologram. Like he's like he's like the Snoop Dogg or Tupac that played at Coachella a couple years ago. That's the guy.
I'm afraid I can't do that, Dave.
So yeah, I enjoyed listening to the boys on Saturday. Hall and Oaks. What do you think about that? By the way,
I love it. I love Hall and Oaks.
It's pretty good, although it's a little on the nose to the actual Hull and Oates. Remember that from the early 90s Blues, which was like one of the best lines. Like they were both putting up like 120-point years when they were together, Adam Oates and Brett Hull. So there's already a hockey precedent for punning on Hall and Oates, but I like it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. So questions. Let's hop on over. Had a couple of questions. Oh, first off, corrections.
You done messed up, Aaron!
Correction here. First, my wife who listened to the show did give me a couple of collections about the figure skating scandal and a couple of errors that I made. She sent me about 5 pages of notes about the whole situation of what's going on. So, first off, the team event, I said I thought it debuted this year. It actually debuted in Sochi in 2014. So it's been a while. It's been around for a while. Valieva was 15 when she was caught with the positive sample. And she actually was able to compete in the individual competition because the team competition was like before the Olympics official, like the opening ceremonies, to fit everything in. So Valieva did compete in the international, even though like she already had a positive sample being tested, or like already had a positive sample. But they said that it would be too harsh of a punishment to kick her out. They were like, let's let her skate and then we'll disqualify her if that's the case. But we don't want to ruin this opportunity for her to skate in the Olympics. She won the short program and absolutely bombed the free skate. And she ended up placing 4th. So it didn't matter that she didn't place on the podium. They were able to get their medals. So basically they awarded the medals then, ended up being that US was first, Japan was second, and then they invalidated all of Valieva's scores, which made the Russian team, which was a Russian Olympic Committee, because again, they can't just go by Russia, place 3rd in the team event. However, even though they got rid of all of her scores, they didn't bump up everybody else's, which if they bumped up everybody else's score by dropping off Valieva, Canada would have been in 3rd, getting a bronze, and Russia wouldn't get a medal. So now there's going to be formal complaints about pretty much everyone. Like Russia's going to file a complaint because they feel they shouldn't be kicked out of a gold medal. Canada's upset because they felt like they should get bronze. And they're now cheated out of that because of it. And now who knows what's going to happen to Valieva. She announced that she is banned for 4 years. And just face it, her career is probably over because she's a Russian figure skater and they don't last very long, female ones, just with how Atari coaches. So those are my corrections. And I apologize to my wife.
You got a lot of that wrong. But not as wrong as me, who brought up Carrie Strug because I thought we were talking about gymnastics. So keep that chin up.
Yep. There we go. So, just wanted to get that correction, and thank you for my wife for listening to the podcast in general. She'll probably have some hot takes about Law and Order and what's his name?
Sam Waterston.
Sam Waterston, yeah. So, How bad of a dad does someone have to be to give college hockey player the middle finger while sitting by them? So that was Dan Jacobson. It's in reference to the dad who, flipped off the Denver dad who flipped off the Western Michigan player after he scored a goal in Western Michigan's rout of Denver in the Saturday game.
Which I caught
So
that
it's just
live because I was watching that as my secondary game on the tablet. And I figured that's going to be memes for a while.
Yeah.
So now it's, Well, do we have, this is sort of a dad assumption here. Do we know he's the dad of the
true.
kid? That could have been like an uncle situation.
It could have been an uncle.
Could have been like that.
Grandpa.
The kid could have been someone else's kid. He was just sitting next to the kid with another group.
I
we're just
like
going to go with
there
he's
were
a
open
dad.
spots, and there were. I'm just going to go with.
He just had a real. The fingers one thing. It was the smugness. Like after Bump,
well, that's Denver fans
looked
for
at
you.
him, and then he sort of did like a nodding the head, like you saw me flick you off.
Yeah,
but
that's Denver fans for you. They got this presumptuous attitude of just being douchey.
I never like to do that. Like, oh, see, I'm going to say this guy, and that's the avatar for the entire fan base because every team has.
Every team
like
has
that.
it. Oh,
St.
100%.
Cloud fans. I mean, there's bad apples in everyone. So let's not lump this all in Denver. Put the guy was there at the end of a 7-2 ass kicking. So I mean, maybe he was kind of a loyal fan, and he's just a little upset. He was still at the anger stage. Not at the depression stage.
Because so much has gotten so poorly for Denver this season.
That goaltending situation might drive someone to get a Xanax prescription. I'm not sure. So
there you go.
There is that.
Any updates on Posh? Last I heard it was week to week, some kind of a strained muscle or something like that. So we'll see.
You heard it was week to week, and that was a couple of weeks ago. So that's like week to week. A couple weeks and then week to week. I don't know why you're asking us. We don't have any inside information.
In your opinion, what are the chances of regionals moving to on-campus sites? I originally thought it would not be a possibility, but it feels like more and more steam is getting behind it to where I would even say it's a 50-50 shot. And I would say even probably a little bit more so, like a 60-40, that they eventually will. I think in the end, it's going to come down to money. And I think that this is a cheaper option.
Eventually would be that's doing a lot of heavy lifting there in that question or in your speculation.
Sure.
Because they've got to come up with, they're announcing new regional sites. It's either during this year's regional or like in October. It's within the 2024 calendar year. So pretty soon we're going to get the next batch of regional spots, and they usually go like 4 years out. So the next time that they announce, they'll announce for until like 2030, let's say, just to throw out an even number. I would put the odds of that, whatever announcement that is, like 95%, it's going to be all neutral sites still. But the next announcement, I would think that percentage is going to shrink because, like you said, I do feel like there is a shifting of opinion. I will say it seems like there is a sectional divide here. You brought up like around Christmas, it was the Hockey East commissioner, Metcalf.
Mm-hmm.
And he did some interview with one of the Boston papers that was saying like, we all of our coaches like the neutral sites. And so it seems like East Coast coaches like it, whereas the West Coast, namely guys like David Carl's been outspoken about this. It's more the Western leagues, those coaches, because I think did Weems go on the record to say that the majority of NCHC coaches were in favor of campus regionals? I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. At the very least, there has been coaches like Carl who have been vocal in favor of campus regionals. I think the East Coast bias kind of narrative is a little overdone, but I think there is some truth to it as well, where just the bulk of teams, the majority of the 64 teams in college hockey, 40 of them roughly are pretty close together there in the New England, Northeast states. And if you're always guaranteed at least 2, if not in some years, like last year, 3 regionals in that area, if you counting Allentown in that region, then for them, you never have to get on a plane to go to any of these regionals. You're relatively close to home, which means your fans don't have to also get on a plane to go to any of these regionals. And so it might be as simple as that for the East, it's not as much of a problem because they feel like it's a system that works for them and their fans. And you can't say too, you can't say necessarily that it's such a disadvantage for the West though, because yes, the East has won 2 of the last 3 national titles, but going back there, it was 6 in a row from the NCHC, something like that. So I mean, the majority of natties have still come from the West in this last decade, or even stretching out beyond that. So you can't say that the extra travel burdens for the regionals for the Western teams are putting them at a disadvantage in terms of winning the whole thing. But that's a divide that's probably going to be more important than maybe the money aspect of it, because if enough coaches in that area of the country are not willing to really move from the current situation, I don't think there's going to be a critical mass that is really going to change things. There's got to be, but I do think there is a shift, and who knows, maybe you see 4 or 5 Western teams have to jump on a plane this year to go to suburban St. Louis and be like, wow, I don't really like this. And maybe they're like, well, I don't know, maybe campus wouldn't be so bad. So it's possible. Like I said, I still would imagine this next batch, we're still going to be campus, but maybe the announcement after that, I'm more confident that there could be at least not campus sites, but some change, either the number of regionals or like my crazy harebrained idea of putting it in like a super regional situation in Los Angeles or something like that. Some different from what we're doing now, 16 teams and 4 regionals. I would say that the time's come for some tweaking of that system, and we'll see if that comes to fruition.
And then last question, am I too hung up on us not having enough guys that can score even semi-reliably? Having 3 to 4 forwards out of 12 isn't nearly enough. Just some of that consistency, especially even with the 3 out of the 12 or so. I mean, we're talking about, like, I think Viti is the only one that's been, fairly consistent scoring all year. Yeah, he'll have a couple weekends where he doesn't score a goal, but I would say he's never been in a slump. But you have Molinar, who came in and then now he's out. You had Okabe, obviously he was out, now he's in. So it's Kupka has been, pretty solid as of late, and I guess I'd have to double check to see. He might have been even more productive than I remember, going back throughout the whole season. But yeah, it's, some of that depth. Ingram's been coming on here quite a bit as of late. So, Kupka has been pretty reliable. But
got off to a slow start. I think the first couple of weekends he didn't do much, but starting in like late October, he's been pretty consistent since then.
Yep. So,
but we've got some real talented players, but I'm not sure if we have. We certainly don't have the depth that we had in those number 1 overall seed years. That's not saying anything controversial there when you're running 3-4 lines deep and guys with 40, 50 points on the season, multiple. Don't have those kind of stats with this year's team. And again, I think it comes down to, I mean, like top two lines in particular. Like what holds back CC, I think, from really becoming a serious threat is that they don't really have a second line. They have a good first line, but not really much of a second line. Kind of say the same thing about Omaha with North Dakota. I think like watching them again a little bit this weekend, they got a great top line, but I think a key player for them, it's one that I don't think St. Cloud ever had a chance in this guy, but he was a big pickup for them in the portal, that Cam Berg from Omaha. And he's been picking up some key goals for them for North Dakota this year. And as a second liner, plus he gets a fair amount of power play time with them as well. Like you see that, like if you get like a solid stud second liner, especially playing center, that does wonders for scoring depth. Whereas you look at St. Cloud's second line center, it's Mason Salquist. And that's if he's not first line center for that game. And so that there was kind of a difference. And Salquist put 12 points. I don't think he's like necessarily a problem. It's just as a second line or quasi first line center, you see the difference between him and a guy like Berg or the players that Denver puts out on their top few lines. That's what separates, good to average to middling to like tournament level and beyond types of teams. So, I mean, yes, this team doesn't have like the true star power that's going to rack up the numbers, but I still think there's enough overall depth that can certainly make the tournament, but I'm skeptical on that in and of itself. And even if they do make the tournament, it kind of surprised me if they would make a run in the tournament based on what they've got. But there's still time for me to change my mind about that, because my mind has been changed a few times this year. So it would be fitting for it to change yet again. But I would tend to agree with the questioner that it's not even just offense in particular. Like we mentioned, other than the CC weekend, the weekends before that, able to generate a lot of scoring chances. The problem there was a lack of finishing. And I think it's guys like Salquist, which that does stick out when you're generating that much offense, but just not able to punch in more goals. That's more what's holding them back than the overall offensive push. Again, we didn't see that this last weekend in CC, but hopefully we can see that in Miami against a lesser opponent. You can maybe get that, good transition and neutral zone play, get those breakout and stretch passes clicking. This team can dictate offense. It's just, I think, a matter of depth and finishing chances that they're able to produce. That's, I think, what's holding them back in this funk.
No, I 100% agree. POW for the women's. Taylor Lind, I thought she was incredibly good in all aspects, really, for the Wisconsin series. Like I said, JoJo, was really the reason we got that 1 point. She was a contender as well, but
I think I'm going to go with Choback for that reason. Kaufman had a couple of assists on Sunday as well. I thought she had a pretty decent weekend, but Choback, you wouldn't have made that game to overtime if not for her performance. So it's been rare, but I've given a whole, I think the Ohio State win that weekend, I gave a whole of the POW, even though she just played the one game. So I'll return the favor and give the POW to JoJo this week.
It's a straight goalie platoon situation. Here you go. Mm-hmm. You get one, now you get one.
Right.
So, but she definitely deserved it. That's for sure. So anyway, that about does her. This episode of the Huskies Hockey Podcast. Reach me at Weldie, I am Weldie at More Clappers, MOAR, More Clappers. Andrew?
Well, you can reach me at email, Andrew at, or Husky, what is it? Andrew, no. I totally forget what my email address is. Was it your email Husky, or your Green Ground? The Green Ground is Andrew at greenground.net.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you were just combining the two.
I was. I don't know why. It's the I'm sorry, it's the email that I use for Green Ground. I just spoiled it. I got to change my password now, I bet. But the email is huskieshockeypodcast@gmail.com. If by rare chance you are also going to be at the games this weekend in Miami, do let me know. We can get up for a beer. I am looking forward to the trip. I was doing some research. I had to kind of look around because it was kind of a niche product, but I got it off Amazon. It's called Gator Raid, which is Gator and then RAID. It's like a spray canister. Yeah. And because I found out that alligator attacks are most common in February for some reason. I didn't really know why, but it's kind of like a bear spray. So they say just, if you see an alligator coming, you kind of spray it between the eyes, they say. And that will prevent the alligator from attacking. And so I had to stock up on that because I kind of have a fear of alligators and crocodiles and all those kind of like swamp creatures. And so and then reading about that, it kind of gave me a little bit of the willies. So I had to stock up on some Gator Raid. And, but yeah, I'm well prepared for my trip. And so I hope to see some other Huskies fans there. And if you are planning on coming, let me know. We can go get a tiki drink, crank up the Jimmy Buffett, and maybe hit a Margaritaville at Cheeseburger in Paradise. I think one of those chains is still active. But something like that, we can hang out. And some Husky fans in Paradise.
Does the Gator Raid also protect against crocodile or just alligator?
Crocodiles, it says lizards. Yeah. But it's crocodiles and alligators. They give it a 97.8% rating on effectiveness.
Oh, okay. Nice.
That's what they guarantee. Because I was pretty interested in this, I actually was able to Google them and send them an email about a potential sponsorship opportunity. I have not heard back yet, but for those that have been missing our sponsors, trust me, I have two. We might have one in the works, and we'll see. I hope I don't need to use the Gator Raid, but here's hoping that if I need to, it will be a 97.8% effective.
Perfect. That's awesome. Which is really good because this podcast ain't free, folks. We got software, and so we do appreciate you hanging
Gatorade.
With our
Gatorade is I put that on the company card, so I hope you're okay with that, boss.
Yeah, that's fine. So it's a write-off. So.
Do you want your co-host to be mauled by an alligator during a Huskies road trip? I don't think so.
Doesn't matter. Get back on the pod. We got a recap. I don't care if you're in the hospital. Alligator marks. So until next time, go Huskies. Woo!